Hello everyone, this is Alazir Chess here to help you to realize your potential. And today we'll be looking at three of my games, one against an IM, one against FM Miguel Gonzalez, and one against a 2400 player on eChess. And I would like to thank all of you who are new to the channel who came over from Agadmator's video on my game of the month. And most of all, I would like to thank Agadmator himself for even showing that game and for alerting all of you to my existence. So thank you and a warm welcome to him as well as to all of you, and thank you for being here. Now, I like to show short games that I've played on my channel, whether they be bullet games, rapid games, blitz games, or classical games in tournaments. And I would also like to show short games of other players of the past and current top players. And if you like attacking chess, you've come to the right place. So let me know down in the comments what I could do to improve the channel. Also, let me know if there's any openings that you would like me to play to generate games that could be served as examples of how to play particular openings, as well as if there are any openings that you would like me to break down for you. And also, I'm going to be installing a new microphone soon and an audio set so I can improve the quality of the channel. But if there are any other things that I could do to improve the quality for everyone here, let me know in the comments and I'll fix it up for you guys. So here I'm going to be starting with my game against an IM from Iceland. I don't know who this person is. They don't have their name on their account. Then we'll be taking a look at my game against FM Misaso, who's a Colombian FM by the name of Miguel Gonzalez. And then I'll be looking at a game against a 2400 that I played. So let's get into it. I play e4 and he plays the Smith's Mora, and he plays the e5 declined variation. So after taking and taking, I play knight to f3, and after knight to c6, I play bishop c4 in the old romantic gambit style, and after bishop to b4 check, bishop to d2, he plays queen a5, which is a blunder. Now, what he should have done was taking on d2, and after queen takes, knight to f6, bishop to d5, and the game goes on here. And bishop to d5 stops him from playing d5 himself, and it also protects the pawn on e4 and allows for me to get castled and to go after the d4 pawn, and the position is equal. But after queen to a5, queen b3, hitting f7, I thought he was going to play knight to h6, and then after castles, takes, knight takes, castles, h3. This position is a bit better for white, quite a bit better, because even though I'm down a pawn, the problem is, look at his development. The knight on h6 is not in play. This bishop on c8 is not in play. The rooks are not connected, and I have the ability to bring both of my rooks into play and to recoup the pawn on d4. So white is a lot better here. But instead, he took, and after taking, he played queen to h5 to cover f7. And now I played the move g4. And I thought that queen to g6 would follow, and I was thinking about playing pawn to h4, but he took the pawn, after which I played bishop takes f7, and it's check. And I thought here that he would play king f8, and after king to f8, the computer suggests rook to g1, but I would have played bishop to d5 here, and if knight to f6, queen a3 check, king e8, and this is what I was envisioning during the game. And white is just much better here because I can follow up with rook to g1, takes g7, and rook to c1, and or castles queenside, and a potential for king b1, and maybe rook from d1 back to c1 if necessary. So in the game, he played king to d8 though, which is a blunder that just drops the knight. And after knight to e7, bishop d5. The rest is just a matter of technique, as they say, but there is a pretty combination at the end where his rook was hanging, and after a swap out, he can't prevent mate after takes, takes, or takes, takes. So the 2600 from Iceland and IM, he or she, I don't know who this person is, loses in 18 moves because checkmate is coming on move 19. So such is the power of the Smith-Morra, and this is exactly why you need to have something concrete against it if you play the Sicilian, because it's a forced variation. After d4 takes, there's only but so many things you can play after c3. You can play d5, which transposes into a Panov-Botvinnik. You can play d3, but d3 allows for white to get into a Marazzi bind, as d5 is not playable here due to bishop e5 check, and then white wins a pawn. And you can play knight to f6, which goes into an Alapin, and you can also play, as he did in the game, with e5, but e5, while it's equal by the computer, you definitely have to know what you're doing here. And these are basically your choices, but you can't just wing it in these lines because they're very dangerous. White has a lot of practical chances, especially in faster time controls. So I'll be putting together a course for everyone that I could put up on my YouTube channel that you guys can enjoy for free and get to learn how to deal with the Smith-Morra as black. And I'll be putting that up within the next 2 weeks or so. But I definitely have to do a lot more research because even when I play against the Morra, I have a lot of problems. And I would also like to thank Mark Esserman for these victories, as I've watched over 150 of his videos on the Smith-Morra, as well as I'm reading his book, Mayhem in the Morra, and the Morra is one tough nut to try to crack. So now I would like to turn our attention to the game against Misaso, FM Miguel Gonzalez of Colombia. And yes, this is a bullet game, as everyone can see here, but even though it's a bullet, there's a lot of instructional value to this game in the 4-knight Sicilian, as after this trade, I get a pawn in the center, and after bishop to d3, d5, castles, bishop e7, bishop g5, h6, and here we have the first serious mistake from white, with bishop takes knight. Now, normally I'm not the biggest fan of the bishop pair, but as I become a better player, I'm appreciating them more. And the thing here is white really needed to play bishop d2 to potentially keep alive some ideas of queen c1 and sacrificing on h6, as well as keeping some dark square control in the position. Now, by playing bishop takes knight, he's given me all the dark squares, but also the power to crack its formation at will. So after king h1, I decide to crack the formation because I don't believe at this point I could lose the game anymore. I believe that this position for black should be drawn or won with proper play if white messes up. And the thing is, here after takes and castles, he should play c4, and c4 would liquidate these double pawns and go after my formation, but he chose to play pawn to e5, which is not a good move, even though it opens up his right squared bishop, because now this queen has no entry points. It can't get to h7 if it can't go through g6, f5, or e4. And because of these doubled c-pawns, he can't bring the bishop back to c2 or b1 and put the queen in front to threaten a mate. Therefore, there's no way for him to provoke a weakness in my king side. I just simply don't have to touch anything. And now here what I should do is play queen to a5 to prepare a bishop to a6 and exchanging that light squared bishop, seeing as mine is not very useful in this French formation here. But I played queen to b6, which is not the greatest, as we'll see in a moment. And after f4, bishop a6, I run into rook b1, which forces me to a5 anyway. But I'll be able to get the tempo back from rook b1 later with the move rook a b8. So after f5, swap out on d3. If f6 was played, I could simply take on f1, and after queen g4, g6, queen h4, bishop takes g2 as the computer suggestion. I know here I would just play king h7, as I don't want to open up more lines in front of my king. I just want to win by being up a rook and bring all my pieces to attack his king and or defend my king. And I'd be looking at moves such as queen takes c3, where he can't blast off with the rook due to queen a1 and attacking his king on the back rank, which gives me time to either attack these pawns or bring my queen to my king's defense. So in the game, after queen takes bishop, he takes f5, and after rook takes, he has no attack. Rook a b8, rook double up, trouble up on the f file, queen takes a2, and now I can force an exchange with rook b1 unless he plays queen d1, which he doesn't. And so rook b1, swap out, a5, passed pawns must be pushed. And here after rook f4, a4, a4 is a mistake. It would have been better to play queen a3, so I can perch the queen on the c5 square. And after queen d4, preventing that, queen back to e7, which puts eyes on e5, threatens to double up and take it potentially. Also guards the a7 square from infiltration. Here, black is just much better, as you can see, and this would be pretty much a winning position. But here, passed pawns must be pushed, so I pushed the pawn, and then I took on c2, which led to an exchange of prisoners, as they say. And after little Johnny gets down the board to a2, rook behind, and now queen takes, loose pieces drop off, e6, queen e8, and now I can just force the pace of the play, and I start pushing everything down the board. And after the king runs down, we have mate and a few more moves, and that's game. So here from this game, this guy is 2660, but I got out of the opening equal, and this is actually a nice setup that I love using because I like to transpose back into the Sveshnikov here without playing the Sveshnikov directly, because I do like the French Sicilian positions that can arise after the Alapin. So after c3, d5, d4, these positions I like to play. I also like to play the positions with e takes, knight f6, d4, knight f6, and the isolated pawn positions that can arise after a later d takes c5. Now let's move on to our final game, and this is against a 2400 player. I don't know who this person is. And this was in the English, to which I played the Owens. And after bishop to b7, knight f3, bishop takes knight, cracking the formation. And here, this position is fine for a blitz and bullet, even though I wouldn't recommend giving up the light squared bishop in a classical game, potentially not even in a rapid game. But I did win a nice blitz game a few years back against Evgeny Levin in this formation, and he's a grandmaster, and he was 27 and change at the time on Lichess. So I had played c6 in that game instead of taking on c4, but I took on c4 here just to experiment, And after knight to c3, white has already lost a large chunk of the advantage. Here, instead of knight to c3, white should play f4, and I'm showing everyone this game, so this way you know what to do in case someone tries to damage your formation in this way, as well as, so this way you could potentially play this line yourselves, but to play it correctly with c6, and then later on you can take on c4 if white doesn't take on d5, and then you can also take on f5 as well. But here in this position, the computer likes bishop to b4, after bishop to e7, after everything swaps out, white is just completely winning after, instead of taking immediately, playing rook to d1 first. The queen has to keep eyes on the rook, and if something like queen to c8, we have takes, and if queen to e8, we have the simple bishop c6, forcing the queen to go back, and then the rook falls and we get the same position with the pawn on c4 falling, and so it's only one pawn for the exchange, and with an unsafe king on the f8 square, white is just completely winning here. So in the game, after d takes c4, knight c3, knight d7, f4, rook b8, leaving that long diagonal, b3, takes, bishop to e7. Here, white should have seen the attack and taken the attack with knight to b5, because knight to a7 is unstoppable, followed by knight to c6, and I won't be able to coordinate my major pieces. So here, white played rook d1, castles, and bishop to b2, and after bishop to b2, which was the last chance to play knight b5, again, you're not able to coordinate your forces the way that you would like to be. After bishop to b2, all your pieces are developed, but you are down a pawn. You do have the bishop pair, but there's nothing on this diagonal for you, and you're not going to be able to reach c6 in the desired manner with proper play for me, which is why here I should play pawn to b5, which opens up the rook's scope when the knight hops to b5, as well as after d5, e5 takes, the b5 pawn protects the c4 square so that my knight can hop in, and after takes, knight f4 going after f2, queen d3, because a6 was looming, queen d3, a6, bishop takes, hitting the rook on a1, the knight on b5 is also hit, knight to c3 creates interference, rook b2 targets the f2 pawn and threatens a fork on f2 with the knight, and after rook d2, knight e5 is a tempo gain on the queen, queen e2, rook takes, knight c4. Now this knight can blockade on the d6 square, and this light squared bishop here is useless. Black has the better bishop and the opposite colored bishop middle game, end game. The knight is blockading, and this pawn on d5 is in the way of this bishop being a useful piece. So this bishop is going to have to spend time relocating as well. So black is perfectly equal here. But instead of b5, I played queen to c8, and after d5 takes, knight f6, rook g5, h6 evicts the rook, bishop to d6 again evicts the rook, and on rook e2, so that you can double up, treble up, my knight is now hanging to this bishop. I don't need my formation cracked, so queen to f5 protects, and after double up, I get ready to trade off the rooks. Queen to c3 threatens mate on this diagonal if I'm not careful. Takes, rook e8, knight takes, guards g7. After h3, queen c5, queen b5 now after queen e1, because white doesn't want to swap when I have a passed c pawn. White tucks the bishop, Bishop goes back to f8, guarding g7, freeing the d6 square so that the knight can occupy it, and also covering any future mates as well as checks on the back rank. So bishop f1, queen a4, bishop c4 is a mistake because of takes, and now queen c1 check, which wins the bishop on a1. And even though my opponent was up 10 seconds, he did not try to run me out of time. So thank you for that. It was a nice gentlemanly game. And here, this game was played with 87% accuracy. Once I got out of the opening after that mistake with d takes c4, and also another mistake was queen to c8. Bishop to e7 is credited as a mistake as well because I should have played a6 to prevent any knight b5 shenanigans. But honestly, I didn't see it until after the game when looking at the game, so I don't want to be too harsh on my opponent either for not seeing it. But it's a very interesting concept of knight b5, a7 to c6, which just chokes the life out of my position. So again here, queen to c8 was a mistake, as I could have went with b5 and increased the scope of my rook and got ready to potentially put a knight on this nice c4 square. So what did all of you think of these games? What type of openings would you like to see me play on the channel? What type of educational content would you like to see me cover? Also, what can I do to improve the quality of the channel? And, please let me know in the comment section below. Thank all of you again for coming over from Agadmator's channel, and thank him for hosting my game. And also thanks to Mark Esserman for Mayhem in the Mora and for all of the videos on his YouTube channel. So I hope all of you enjoyed the video, and I hope to hear from all of you soon. Have a great day, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.